Well, you know, this whole phenomena of embedded journalists getting in bed with invading forces and telling their side of the story, this was a really good example of the perversity and the distortions and the pure propaganda that emerges from this so-called embedded journalism.
Yeah, it's interesting that the film that he made that showed Dupre's at Sundance was not the camera on the other side of the gun, the receiving side of the U.S. gun.
Well, those who are firing at the U.S. soldiers, you know, they have kids, they have grandparents, they have wives. I mean, when these drones go up these valleys in Pakistan, they don't have a machine inside that says, oh, there's some kids, better leave them alone. Oh, there's an Al-Qaeda, boom, boom, boom. Oh, those people, they're just playing cards. No, there's obviously like ethnic cleansing going on here. There's obviously clearing out whole valleys to set up military bases. I mean, Pakistan, this emphasis he kept on, you know, you refer to the Taliban. Well, they're aliens, you know, they're coming in from Pakistan. Well, man, you know, half the country, I mean, there's a civil war in that country. We're taking sides, and I say we, I'm a Canadian. Canadian soldiers, Canadian Armed Forces have been there since 9/11 on the basis of this fraudulent account and plausible account of what happened on 9/11. And unless we get at that, you know, the peace movement can say, well, I'm against all the terrible invasions that happened in the name of this global war on terror. But what originated the global war on terror? I think it's very important to use the phrase the 9/11 wars. Obama, you know, repeated all these Bushite fables about why we're in this. He doesn't use the word global war on terror. But unless we get at the roots of how it happened, unless we, as long as there is this idea that Osama bin Laden and 19 dudes with box cutters cut through the whole system, and that's the only explanation, it's not intellectually respectable. And it really has degraded, you know, our mainstream media. It's degrading our universities because so many people are on the payroll. There's so little real decent scholarship about the most defining event of the 21st century.
Yes. Thank you. And it was very interesting too that he was talking about courage, and you know, but there was no questioning of what the level above existential courage, of moral courage, and that is actually the first oath that those soldiers took.
Yeah.
And he's telling 20-year-olds who took an oath and get paid to not think about why they're actually over here shooting at villagers.
And it was very clear at Nuremberg, and the Nuremberg principles, where people were, you know, accused after accused in the Nazi regime, low down in the Nazi regime, said, well, I was under orders. I had no choice. And those who articulated the Nuremberg principles, which was, you know, a process led by a U.S. prosecutor, Robert Jackson, I mean, out of that came these principles, a key and central one of which was that following orders is no excuse. You're violating laws. You're violating what are known as international laws. You're committing international crimes. And to say that, well, I had to do it because I was under orders, that's not acceptable. So all those soldiers in my country, representing Canada, representing the United States, there is no escape from dealing with the fact that following orders is not an excuse for violating international laws.
And national laws.
National laws.
Because the ongoing so-called war in Afghanistan is a continuation of the 9/11 Black Op, which was a treasonous operation against not only the American people, but it was treasonous against humanity in ways.
No, its implications and its outcome is almost unimaginable because it's being spun in such a way that it's dehumanizing. It creates a public mythology whose effect is to create an image of Arab and Muslim people in places like Los Angeles or Toronto or Paris. And we know from history that the media will dehumanize groups in tyrannical regimes when those groups are being set up for mass murder. We've already got a million murdered in Iraq, 4 or 5 million displaced in a country of 19 million people. That's one element of the 9/11 wars. The worst element of the 9/11 wars is the attack on our consciousness. And it's bringing us into a new era of kind of superstition and darkness, the Cheney view of the world, like the boogeyman is out there. Just trust us. You know, we know who they are. Don't use your rational faculties. Don't use your reason.
Especially if you're a soldier willing to kill and be killed, supposedly for the Constitution. Then you definitely shouldn't use your faculties according to Junger.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, one last comment is that even though the alleged U.S. and Canadian governments are aligned on the genocidal, mass murderous so-called war on terror, there's also those of us Canadians and Americans who are aligned for the global truth, justice, and peace.
Yeah, just think that the government of every country in the world is going along with this implausible, unproven boogeyman story that was delivered to us within hours of the falling of the Twin Towers, long before Building 7 fell at free fall into its own footprint without any plane hitting it, looking like a controlled demolition. So every government in the world is, in theory, going along with this implausible explanation, but the people are getting restive. You know, I've been to Europe, I've been to Vers la Vérité in Paris, I've met the English and Scottish truthers, I've met some of the French truthers, the truthers in France, in Switzerland, in Spain. You know, you go to any part of the world and you're going to find people who can think and who can use the internet and can understand evidence and are not so subject and gullible to the constant propaganda that we've been fed now on a scale that Joseph Goebbels, it makes what Joseph Goebbels did, the minister of propaganda in the Nazi regime. You know, we've taken that science of mind control and opinion control so much further. Edward Bernays, you know, who sold us the Cold War and created the image that Guatemala was a popular uprising against communism, when in fact it was a U.S.-backed coup. I mean, that was just the start of this twisting and distortion of people's consciousness. We know about it when it comes to selling products. We know about when it comes to selling politicians as if they're products. But now we're being spun and mind controlled, the majority of the population, by the captive mass media to dehumanize big parts of the global population in preparation for mass extermination of peoples, for torture of peoples. I didn't hear the word pipeline once in that whole talk. I didn't hear the word torture once in that whole talk.
Well, thanks for coming to LA and speaking a little truth with power here, especially at the library, the Central Library, and across the street from Liberty Tower, which was, you know, another sort of hoaxed, interrupted terrorist event supposedly from Bush.
Yeah. So. Well, you know, we've all been subjected to post-traumatic stress. The image of those towers coming down, you know, it's one of the most horrific things, and it was, in my view, you know, concocted in such a way that the symbolism of those towers was understood. And it was understood that take those things down live on TV and you're going to have a license to do anything. I mean, imagine the Patriot Act, this huge, complex piece of legislation that changes everything in the United States and sets a prototype for all these other countries to go along and violate civil liberties and take away habeas corpus and, you know, innocent until proven guilty. All of these principles. Imagine that came in within literally days. That the invasion of Afghanistan was underway,
before, right?
And it was, yeah, the plans were.
His apolitical assumption, supposedly, of this was a response to 9/11 was already political propaganda based on lies.
It was his idea that the assassination of Massoud was part of the 9/11 operation. He was right on with that position. Yeah.
Who did the 9/11? That's the question. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Tony.
Okay.
Cool.